So every now and then I like to take questions from you CRIQAZI viewers who I am so indebted to on Twitter, and then I take out the time to answer them on this show. So fan Q&A session 2 on this volume of CRIQAZI Diaries.
Have a look at that, miles up, oh, it's nearly taken someone out in the stands. That was a flat six right under the stand there, the George Giffen stand, up into the members, and it went like a rocket. Well, we get 24.
So Techers, who has asked 3 questions in fact, asks first up, thoughts on Wasim Khan's resignation? Well, Techers, I am upset. I don't think this is a good sign for Pakistan cricket because Wasim Khan did a lot for Pakistan cricket during his tenure as PCB CEO. Test cricket returned to Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, South Africa all played Test cricket in Pakistan during his tenure. Then the PSL was hosted in Pakistan in its entirety. Apart from that, the domestic structure was completely revamped, and I think he did a lot of good work when it came to commercializing Pakistan's domestic cricket. Now you can see everyone watching the national T20 Cup, whereas this wasn't the norm before, and the PCB media team under Wasim Khan did wonders, and now I think they're doing a pretty good job after having made that transition under him. And then lastly, I also feel that he did a lot of good work to bring international cricket back to Pakistan and make sure that Pakistan hosts home series quite regularly. Unfortunately, that didn't quite pan out, and I won't blame everything that has transpired in the past few weeks with New Zealand and England pulling out of their tours on Wasim Khan. That's not on him. I think he served Pakistan with dignity. He was a very good spokesperson, a really good voice to have at the top level, and I can only thank Wasim Khan for his services. I think his tenure should be celebrated. So thank you, Wasim Khan, and I wish you all the best. In his second question, Techers asks, is Prime Umar Gul the best T20 death bowler? Well, certainly I would say so. If you remember the early days of T20 cricket in the first few World Cups, Umar Gul was in his prime and he would bowl Yorkers at will, and at the death he was almost impossible to get away, and him hitting the timber was a very, very frequent sight. So I would say pretty much yes, he was. The only other name that comes to mind is Lasith Malinga, and for a lot of people he might edge Umar Gul. I would put them on par, on an even keel, but yes, definitely Prime Gul was as good as it got. In his final question, Techers asks, too much chaos in Pakistan's camp. What's our realistic expectation in the upcoming tournament? Well, you're right over there, Techers. There has been too much chaos, and this last month or so has left Pakistan cricket in absolute tatters, especially given Wasim Khan has resigned as well now. I'm going to give you a two-pronged answer. My heart tells me that this sort of adversity will bring the best out in Pakistan, and the boys who already have fire in the belly will use this to galvanize themselves, rally themselves, and motivate themselves to just perform better, push a little bit harder in the World T20 and make it to the semi-final at the very least. But if I put my analytical hat on and listen to my mind, then I would say it's a toss-up between Pakistan and New Zealand to make the semi-finals. And the fact that we've lost valuable game time, I mean, Pakistan was playing 7 T20 internationals in the build-up to the World Cup. Losing that does not put us in good stead because the team will not have any time to practice as a unit. So yeah, analytically, if I look at it, then it's a toss-up between Pakistan and New Zealand, but heart says Pakistan is definitely making it to the semi. Usman Khan asks, what do you make of ECB's response? Well, for starters, I think that the ECB was just waiting for this news to die down and not give a response at all, and the only reason that they have given a response is because the English media put so much pressure on them. I am not satisfied with the response at all. They did cite security issues, but player welfare being paramount, and if you didn't consider the players' union, then how can you state that? I mean, it's just doesn't make sense to me. If the players themselves had no issues with coming, then that just seems like a very sorry cop-out. And the fact that Ian Watmore mentioned that he had no idea that Joe Biden was going to pull out of Afghanistan. Well, everyone knew. Biden himself said that he will pull out of Afghanistan, and he gave a date for that as well. And this happened, this Afghan takeover by the Taliban happened on 15th August. It's been a while since that, hasn't it? So if you had reservations, why didn't you mention that earlier? So yes, I think it's just a blanket statement to hush the media. I'm not satisfied with, and my heart is still very much broken, and I don't think that Pakistan was dealt with fairly at all. That said, Ian Watmore did say that the ECB very much planned on fulfilling their commitment to tour Pakistan in 2022. So let's see if they fulfill that commitment or not. Only time will tell, and I'm going to hold further judgment till that happens. Hatib Khan asks, what are your thoughts on the national T20 In terms of the competition level, and have any players surprised you? Well, firstly, Hatib, I'd like to thank the PCB for putting together this tournament on such short notice and giving Pakistan cricket fans some cricket to watch in such troubled times. So credit to them for that, and also the media coverage and the broadcasting. I think it's been phenomenal. A plus to the PCB on that too. And the commentary panel is very entertaining, and I in particular enjoy Tariq Said's Urdu commentary a lot, and Mike Hazeman also. I've always been a fan. In terms of the competition level, I'm not too convinced. If I'm being honest, I think the teams aren't very evenly stacked, even though that player loan system during the break, I think it's going to do the tournament well, because players who aren't getting the opportunity to play will now get to play, like Abdullah Shafiq, for example. But I think still the teams aren't quite evenly stacked. I think Balochistan has been dealt a very rough hand. They don't have a lot of Pakistan internationals in that team. And a lot of teams have very similar players playing for them. Like, why are Imad and Nawaz playing in the same team? Or I have other examples too. Like, it just doesn't seem right the way the players have been distributed, and I think this is not good for the competition. More evenly balanced teams would have been better for the competition, and also the standard of batting and in particular fielding has been very, very bad. I'm surprised to see so many misfields that have gone for 4. They've been giving extra runs, and then so many catches have been dropped. So that's disappointing to see. I would like to see better fielding levels, and then as far as batting is concerned, they're just the usual suspects who are performing, right? Rizwan, Babar, and now Sohaib Maqsood scored a 75. So apart from those 3, no one has really shown with the bat. I wouldn't say Saib Sada Farhan has been alright. Sarfaraz has looked in good form. Heather Ali is finally coming back into the form. But as for players who have surprised me, there is this 18-year-old left-arm Chinaman bowler who plays for Southern Punjab called Faisal Akram. I think he's one for the future for sure. Zaman Khan, who has like a Malinga-esque action and plays for Northern, I think he could be exciting in the future. And other than that, Shah Nawaz Dhani is on top of his game. I think he's been brilliant and he just continues to impress. Shaheen Shah Afridi, as expected, is once again amongst the wickets, and he's been really good. And I think Haris Rauf, after a long time, has looked quite impressive, because he was going for a lot of runs in between, and now we're seeing the Haris Rauf of old, the one who did so well in the Big Bash. Then also Imran Khan Sr., he's been on a great run in T20 cricket in the past year or so, and he's impressing a lot. And also, I would like to mention both the leg spinners, Usman Qadir and Zahid Mahmood. I've really enjoyed what I've seen from them, and I really think one of them at least deserves to be in Pakistan's T20 squad as well. Iftikhar, I thought, has been pretty good as well. And I know Asjad Pasha from Cricket For Us will berate me for this because he's not a fan, but I think Iftikhar is a better option than Asif Ali or Khushdil or even Azam. And then Mohammad Wasim Jr., he showed a lot of promise in that knock under pressure versus Sindh, I believe it was, in which he scored a quick fire 30. I thought that was pretty much the best knock under pressure in the tournament thus far. And then, of course, how can I forget Wahab Riaz? He's really turning it up in this national T20, and I'm not particularly surprised because Wahab brings out his best whenever a major global tournament is just around the corner. So yeah, I think all of those guys have done pretty well thus far in the national T20. Sorry, one last player I forgot to mention, and his name is Nasir Nawaz. I saw him for the first time today. He opened for Northern, and he seems like a good hard-hitting batsman who plays in the top order. And since there's such a dearth of batting talent in Pakistan, it was very refreshing to see someone come out there and express himself. And I liked what I saw. Let's see where his career goes. Hasnain Kadir asks, your T20 World Cup 11 for Pakistan. Well, Hasnain, based on the 15-man squad that has been selected, which I'm not very satisfied with, I mean, I'll try my best to come up with an 11 for you. I would open with Rizwan and Babar. 1 down would be Sohaib Maqsood, and 2 down would be Mohammad Hafiz. At 5, literally just draw a straw or something. You have to go with one of Asif, Azam or Khushdil because there aren't any other options. And then at 6, I would have Shadab Khan. At 7, I would actually have Mohammad Wasim Jr. I'm really impressed with his hitting capabilities. And then at 8, of course, you would have Hassan Ali. At 9, 10 and 11, I would slot in Mohammad Nawaz, Shaheen Shah Afridi and Haris Rauf. You can, of course, tweak around with the batting order over here. Sohaib Maqsood did score 75 runs as an opener, so I think he can very much do that job. And if Pakistan want to capitalize in the power play, they could open with Rizwan and Maqsood. And then also Imad and Nawaz. I think only one of them plays, but whoever is bowling better at that point in time, he should get that call up in the first 11. And Imad has come up with a new carom ball. Maybe that brings him wickets, but for now, I would still lean towards Nawaz as my frontline left-arm off spinner. Of course, not to forget, I am counting on Mohammad Hafiz to deliver 4 overs in this lineup. Ibad Beg asks, I know you're not the biggest fan of Shajeel Khan, but if he starts showing consistency, do you think he should be selected for the World Cup? If not, then who has impressed you the most in the national T20 so far? Well, Ibad, you do know my stance with respect to reintegrating tainted cricketers into the national setup. It's very much similar to that of Ramiz Raja's, and I'm simply not a fan. But even if I put that bias aside, you spoke of consistency, and that's something that Shajeel Khan simply does not have. He is a flash in the pan and scores his runs, albeit at a very high strike rate, but after every 6 or 7 innings, that's when he performs with the bat, and that simply does not cut it for me. And if he starts performing consistently, maybe then we can have this conversation. But even apart from that, I think his fitness levels have dropped from 3 or 4 years ago when he was a regular part of the national team. They've deteriorated even further, and that does not bode well for him at all. I don't think his fitness is up to the mark, and unfortunately, I don't see a future for him in the national team. As for who has impressed me the most, I mean, I took a number of names in response to Hatib not too long ago, but if I had to pick one or two of those guys, I would go with Mohammad Wasim Jr. The way he hit out against Sindh in that game under pressure, it reminded me of Hardik Pandya, the way he plays with broad shoulders and hits the ball with the bottom hand over mid-on. I was super impressed, and I think that given the fact that he's only 20 years old, has a really good action, quite a decent bowler, killer Yorker, I think he has a very bright future for Pakistan. I think there's so much more room for improvement, and he can be groomed into a real superstar. So Mohammad Wasim, I would say, has impressed me the most, but I also simply cannot ignore Shah Nawaz Dhani. Ever since he's broken on into the scene, he's just continued to impress. He hasn't put a foot wrong, and right now he's the leading wicket taker in this national T20 thus far at an average of just about 9 point something. So I can't possibly not name Shah Nawaz Dhani over there, because consistently he has shown with the ball, whether it be the PSL or the national T20, and I think it's only a matter of time before he also represents Pakistan, at least in the shortest format. Fatboy Slim asks, big elephant in the room, Wasim Khan's resignation and incoming of Aqib Javed. Well, Fatboy Slim, I have expressed my feelings regarding Wasim Khan's resignation earlier in the video. As for Aqib Javed, I for one haven't heard that yet, but I have heard rumors of Moeen Khan replacing Mohammad Wasim as chief selector soon enough. I don't know how true that is, but given that both Aqib Javed and Moeen Khan are very good friends with Ramiz Raja, and both were present during his opening press conference as PCB chairman, I could see him earmarking both of those guys as his right-hand men, and I wouldn't be surprised if these appointments do take place. But as for how I feel about them, I can only give you a solid answer a little bit into their tenure and based on how Pakistan's team is doing during their tenure. So I can't give you an answer now, but my feelings regarding Aqib Javed, I will give him credit for heading the PDP program for Lahore Qalandars. They have produced some valuable cricketers, Haris Rauf being the prime example. But as a coach for the Lahore Qalandars, I wasn't impressed by him at all. Of course, the Qalandars have only made it to the playoffs once in 6 PSL season, and that tells you something. So not particularly impressed there. But the PCB CEO is a position that requires good administration and communication skills, which Wasim Khan very much had. Can Aqib Javed do that job? I'm not too sure, but only time will tell. Again, I can't give you an answer regarding something that hasn't already happened, but I can see these appointments happening. Ahmed Faruqi asks, with Wasim Khan resigning today, do you have a replacement in mind that the PCB might go with? Also, do you see Wasim Akram ever being part of the board? Well, for starters, Ahmed Faruqi, I do not see a replacement in mind right now. And for one, I think that you might not need a replacement at all. Maybe Ramiz Raja can just be both chairman and CEO, because he's a very vocal person himself. And whatever duties that Wasim Khan had, maybe Ramiz Raja could just take over and there is no need for a CEO. So maybe that happens. As for Wasim Akram, I don't think he'll ever be a part of the board. I don't see him being a part of that setup, because he has mentioned earlier that he wants to spend time with his family, and being committed to Pakistan cricket long term is a massive commitment. So he will contribute with respect to the PSL and short term commitments, but I don't see Wasim Akram tying himself down to a long term commitment with Pakistan cricket. Cricket for Us asks, what is the one fundamental thing that needs to be altered for Pakistan cricket to start flourishing? P.S. You can give us 2 if you can't choose. Well, Asjad from Cricket for Us, I will give you 2, and one will be a short-term fix and one will be a long-term fix. Of course, course, I'm not taking into consideration any external factors in this, like what has just transpired in the last few weeks with New Zealand and England pulling out. That's something Pakistan can't do much about, other than the fact that they would make sure that their home season is full with teams who are surely going to tour, and they won't pull out in the last minute. That's the only thing they could do with respect to that. But I think consistent selection is something that could really change things. In limited overs cricket especially, the selection has not been consistent at all, and the players aren't given a long enough run to prove themselves in the national team. So I think if you have consistent selection in limited overs cricket, because we've seen it in test cricket, but it's lacking in limited overs cricket. If we start having it over there as well, I think the performances will follow. And a long-term fix, which I'm sure Ramiz Raja has already started working on, is to have a tiered structure in your domestic circuit. You have first-class cricket, top division, then Division 2, then it goes down to club cricket, then maybe school cricket. I think having that tiered structure in your domestic circuit will give every aspiring cricketer a roadmap of what they need to do in order to make it to the national team, or at least to the top level of first-class cricket. So I think that could really help Pakistan, and Ramiz Raja for sure will do something about that. I'm quite confident. Osama Jalil Bhatti asks, first of two questions actually, will we see bashing and utility all-rounders in Pakistan cricket once again like we had in the past, in the likes of Razak Afridi and Azhar Mahmood? If yes, then who has got the potential to fill the boots in the present Pakistan cricket team? Well, Osama, I think you've got a number of options over there with respect to hard-hitting and bashing all-rounders. Of course, they might not be of the same quality as Razak Afridi and Azhar Mahmood, but they definitely have the potential to get there. I mean, Mohammad Wasim Jr. is one of those prime examples right in front of you. Then you have Fahim Ashraf as well, who is doing great in test cricket, but limited overs, his form with the bat is not too impressive at all. Then you've got other options in Ahmad Butt, Amir Yameen. There are other players in the circuit who can do that. Of course, there are some spinners as well, Shadab Khan being the most obvious answer, and then you've also got Imad Wasim and Mohammad Nawaz. So I think there are players who can do that. It's just that they might just not be at that level yet, but definitely they have the potential to reach those levels and potentially even higher. In fact, one player that I forgot to mention in that list of players who I think has already kind of reached that level is Hassan Ali. Ever since he's come back from injury and after performing in the Quaid-e-Azam Trophy with that 100 in the final, I think he's a proper bowling all-rounder now. He's got that Afridi-esque sort of style coming in the lower order and just hitting sixes for fun. And then as a bowler, I think he's definitely touching that world-class barometer, and I think he's only going to get better provided he stays fit. I've got a lot of hope from Hassan Ali. In his second question, Osama Jalil Bhatti asks, I know you're a die-hard cricket fan, but apart from that, what other sport do you follow closely? Well, Osama, you got that right. Cricket is definitely my fuel, and I could simply not live without it. But I do follow a lot of sports closely, actually. I'm a sports fanatic, you could say, as far as watching sports is concerned. And football would come at number 2. I am a massive Chelsea Football Club fan. You can also see Chelsea's crest on my cap over there. And if you ever visit my apartment or just look at a picture or two, it's full of Chelsea merchandise. I've got scarves, I've got 10 posters, I've got shirts on the wall. And of course, Chelsea are the current reigning European champions in club football. So great time to be a Chelsea supporter. And also, I'm a big fan of the German football team as well, the national team. In fact, I've been a fan of the German national team longer than I have been a Chelsea fan. And yeah, I've also got a German flag over here. I absolutely love football, even though not as much as cricket, but if there's ever a second sport, it's always going to be football. So I hope Germany can win the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. Let's go Deutscher Fußballbund. And also tennis, albeit I haven't watched tennis properly in a long time, but I was a die-hard Rafa Nadal fan, and I'm very happy that he tied Federer with 20 Grand Slams, and I'm a little sad that Novak Djokovic will probably most likely overtake both Rafa and Federer. But yeah, tennis I don't watch that much or that frequently anymore, but I do follow what's going on, especially in the Grand Slams. And then basketball is going to be the fourth sport. I did get quite into it in the middle. I do reside in Toronto, and when the Toronto Raptors won, I was like, it was ecstatic over here. Everyone was just going crazy, and it was a great time to be in Toronto. But I wouldn't call myself a Raptors fan, because when they lose, I'm not devastated. And my definition of being a fan is that when you are devastated when your team loses. So in basketball, I pretty much support anyone who is not the Golden State Warriors. Saad Nasser asks, do you think it's a good idea to make changes to Pakistan's T20 World Cup squad? If yes, then what changes would you make? Well, Saad, I am in two minds over here because, of course, on one hand, I feel like once you do select a 15-man squad, you need to give that squad confidence that no matter what, you will be representing Pakistan in the T20 World Cup. And with that confidence, you give them a sense of security. But in this particular case, I think the squad that has been selected is terrible. I don't think either of Asif, Khushdil or Wasim Khans, they warrant a spot in the team. And the fact that we're having the national T20 right now, it gives us a pretty good idea of who's in form and who isn't. So I think it wouldn't be the worst idea to make some changes. And I would definitely make a few. So if we are only selecting from the reserves, which are Fakhar Zaman, Shahnawaz Dhani and Usman Qadir, if that is the only option and they don't want to look elsewhere, I would bring all three in. Because I think all three of them are somewhat in form, and I think Pakistan will need an additional leg spinner, a backup opener, and I think Dhani, I would rate him higher than Hasnain as it stands. But also, there are other players that I feel deserve to be in the squad. Like, I always felt that Shoaib Malik should be in the squad. He has a lot of experience. It's a World Cup in Asia. And then he has both gears, right? He can also consolidate an innings and then can hit out. And that's something that I can't say for Asif, Khushdil or Azam. They're just purely hitters. And similarly, Iftikhar Ahmed, if not for Shoaib Malik, then Iftikhar can pretty much do that same job. He can consolidate and hit out. And he can pace his innings. So I'm definitely in favor of both those guys, or at least one of those guys. But I doubt that will happen. And then lastly, I think Sarfaraz Ahmed, he's in form now. He's such a good player of spin. I think I would definitely select him ahead of Azam. But of course, it might be too close for comfort now. And if anything, they might just bring in the reserves. And if they do decide to do that, I'm all in favor. I would bring all three in. Usman Qadir, Fakhar Zaman and Shahnawaz Dhani. Because I think they definitely warrant a spot over some of the guys that have been selected. Some final thoughts before I end this video with regard to your question, Saad. I think Pakistan has selected one pacer too many over here, especially for a UAE World Cup. And I think they will need a backup leg spinner. Shadab Khan hasn't been in great form with the ball, and you need a frontline leg spinner. So if not Usman Qadir, maybe you could look at Zahid Mahmood, but you need a leg spinner. So that is absolutely imperative. I think if they only have to make one change, that's the change they make. But also, coming back to Shoaib Malik and Iftikhar Ahmed, both can offer a little bit with the ball if need be, and both are fantastic boundary riders. They simply do not drop a catch. So I just think that rationale makes sense. But of course, we aren't Mohammad Wasim and we're not sure what will happen. But I think Pakistan will definitely end up making a few changes because they always do that. The precedent has been set. You can remember Wahab Riaz's inclusion in the 2019 Cricket World Cup, the 50 over one. So some changes I think are definitely on the cards. I just hope they make the right ones. That's a wrap for volume 47, guys. Thank you so much to everyone who sent in their questions on Twitter. Of course, without the CRIQAZI family, I would literally be nothing, and I'm so indebted to you, all of you viewers, who take out the time to watch my videos. So a big thank you from me. We're up to 173 subscribers, so let's hit that 1,000 mark soon enough. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, like it, share it, subscribe it, show it to your friends. Don't forget to hit that bell icon in order to be notified about my latest videos. That's going to be all for now, folks. I'll see you when I'll see you. Qazi off the mic.
Have a look at that. Smiles up. Oh, it's nearly taken someone out of the stands. That was a flat six right under the stand there, the George Giffen stand, up into the members, and it went like a rocket.